The emergency alarm echoed through the halls of the Galactic Military Academy. Han-Woo Park looked up from his training manual, his dark eyes narrowing at the familiar sound. This wasn't a drill, not at this hour. All Earth-born cadets report to Conference Room Alpha immediately. The announcement system boomed in Standard Galactic. Han-Woo caught sight of his fellow cadet, Jia Lee, already rushing down the corridor. Her combat boots made soft thuds against the metal floor as he fell into step beside her. "Third emergency this month," Jia said, her voice tight with concern. Something's wrong. They weren't the only ones heading to the conference room. Other human cadets, all from Earth, streamed in from different directions. Han-Woo noticed they were the only ones being called. No alien cadets, no senior officers from other worlds. The conference room doors slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, Admiral Kress, a tall bird-like being from the avian sector, stood at the front. His feathers were ruffled, a sign of distress that every cadet had learned to recognize in their xenobiology classes. "We have a crisis," the Admiral began, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into clear Standard Galactic. "In the past 3 months, we've lost 7 alien officers in basic survival training. 3 more are in critical condition." A wave of whispers swept through the room. Han-Woo felt his stomach tighten. The Academy had never lost so many officers before. The Admiral continued, "The Council has finally admitted what we Earth liaison officers have been saying for years. We need humans, specifically you Deathworlders, to teach our officers how to survive." The room fell silent. Han-Woo exchanged glances with Jia. Everyone knew humans came from what other species called a death world, a planet with high gravity, extreme weather, and countless natural hazards. To them, Earth was a nightmare. To humans, it was just home. "But sir," one cadet spoke up, "we're just cadets. These are senior officers we're talking about." The Admiral's head bobbed in what humans had learned was a smile. "Exactly. You're cadets who can survive conditions that kill our most experienced officers. You've grown up on a planet that would crush most species, in weather that would freeze or burn them, eating food that would poison them." He touched a control panel, and a hologram appeared. It showed training grounds where alien officers struggled with what seemed to humans like basic tasks, walking in Earth normal gravity, handling temperature changes, dealing with rain. "We need 4 training teams," the Admiral announced. "Each team will have 2 human cadets teaching 10 alien officers. You'll have full authority during training sessions, regardless of rank." Han-Woo felt his heartbeat quicken as the Admiral's gaze swept the room. This was big, bigger than any assignment cadets usually received. "Hark, Lee," the Admiral called out. "You 2 have the highest survival training scores in your class. You'll take Team Alpha. Your officers arrive tomorrow." Jia straightened beside him. "Sir, what exactly will we be teaching them?" "How to stay alive," the Admiral replied simply. "Your Earth survival training, modified for their physiologies. They need to learn how to handle gravity shifts, temperature extremes, atmospheric changes, everything that you humans take for granted." The Admiral's expression grew serious. "I won't lie to you. Some of the officers you'll be teaching aren't happy about this arrangement. They're proud warriors, scientists, and leaders on their worlds. Being taught by cadets, especially from a primitive death world, is difficult for them to accept." Han-Woo nodded. He understood pride. Every cadet did. But pride wouldn't keep anyone alive in a crisis. "Sir," he spoke up, his voice clear and steady. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow at 600 hours. Your first group includes Commander Vress from Tursus, a low-gravity world. Their bones break easily here. Lieutenant Nixus from Hydra 9. They need constant moisture. And Captain Teller, a crystalline being who can shatter under stress." The Admiral looked at each cadet in turn. "Remember, you're not just teaching survival skills. You're showing the galaxy why humanity, despite our short time in space, has earned its place among the stars. As Hanwoo left the conference room with Jai Yun, his mind was already working on training plans. Tomorrow, they would begin teaching some of the galaxy's most experienced officers how to survive in conditions that humans called normal. Ready for this? Jai Yun asked as they walked back to their quarters. Hanwoo smiled slightly. They survived Space Academy. Now they just need to learn how to survive Earth. Little did they know, this assignment would change not just their careers, but the entire galaxy's view of human Deathworlders. The training room fell silent as Commander Vress entered. The mantis-like alien officer moved with careful steps, his thin limbs already shaking under Earth's gravity. Behind him, Lieutenant Nixus's amphibian skin glistened with protective moisture, while Captain Teller's crystalline form sparkled under the lights. Hanwoo and Jai Yun stood at attention, but the alien officers didn't return their salute. Commander Vress's antennae twitched in what the cadets recognized as annoyance. "Let's be clear," Vress said through his translator. "This situation is temporary. We are here because the Council ordered it." Jai Yun stepped forward, her voice firm but respectful. "With all due respect, Commander, we're here to help you stay alive." "Help us?" Captain Teller's crystalline form vibrated with a sound like chiming bells, their species' version of laughter. "Your species only joined the Galactic Alliance 50 years ago. We have been exploring space for thousands of years." Hanwoo walked to the room's control panel. "Then please, Captain, show us how you would handle this." He pressed a button, and the room's artificial gravity slowly increased. The effect was immediate. Commander Vress's legs buckled. Lieutenant Nixus flattened against the floor. Captain Teller's crystalline surface began to crack under the pressure. Hanwoo quickly returned the gravity to normal. That was only 1/3 of Earth's natural gravity, the gravity that humans live in every day. The alien officers were silent now, their earlier pride replaced with shocked understanding. "Let me show you something," Jai Yun said, activating a holoscreen. "This is Earth." Images flashed across the screen. Raging blizzards, scorching deserts, flooding rivers, dense jungles. "We don't have environmental controls like your worlds. Our planet changes constantly. Sometimes all these conditions can happen in one place within a single day." Lieutenant Nixus's throat sacs pulsed with interest. "How do you survive such chaos?" "We adapt," Hanwoo explained. "That's what we're going to teach you. Not just to survive, but to adapt." He pulled out 3 devices from a storage unit. "These are personal environmental suits, modified for each of your species. They're not meant to protect you completely. That would defeat the purpose. They'll just help you adjust gradually." As the alien officers examined the suits, Jai Yun continued the lesson. "Commander Vress, your suit has gravity compensators. They'll decrease support over time as your body strengthens. Lieutenant Nixus, yours maintains moisture, but will slowly reduce it to help you adapt to drier conditions. Captain Teller, your suit includes crystalline stabilizers to prevent shattering while you develop stronger molecular bonds." "Fascinating," Captain Teller chimed, their earlier skepticism fading. "Your species developed these." "Yes," Hanwoo said, "because we had to. Earth taught us that survival isn't about being the strongest or the most advanced. It's about being able to change." Commander Vress attempted to stand straighter, his exoskeleton creaking with effort. Perhaps we have something to learn from your planet's harshness." "We'll start simple," Jai Yun said, pulling up a training schedule. "First, you'll learn to move in increasing gravity, then temperature adaptation. Finally, rapid environmental changes. But before any of that," Hanwoo added, "you need to understand why humans are different." He activated another holoscreen, showing Earth's evolutionary history. "Our planet tried to kill us countless times. Instead of dying, we got stronger. Every human carries that history in their DNA." Lieutenant Nixus raised a webbed hand. "Is that why humans heal so quickly and can eat almost anything?" "Exactly," Jai Yun smiled. When your planet constantly tries to kill you, you either adapt or die. Humans chose to adapt. As the first day's orientation ended, the alien officers lingered, asking questions they'd been too proud to ask earlier. Hanwoo noticed their body language had changed, less rigid, more open. Commander Vress approached the cadets last. "I believe," he said slowly, "we may have judged Earth too quickly. Your death world has much to teach us." Hanwoo nodded. "Tomorrow, we start your real training. It won't be easy, but I promise you this, when we're done, you'll be able to survive anywhere." As the alien officers left, Jae-yun turned to Hanwoo. "They're starting to understand." "Yes," he agreed, "but understanding is the easy part. Tomorrow, they learn what it really means to be a Deathworlder." The simulated Earth environment hummed to life around them. Hanwoo watched as the alien officers entered the training room, each wearing their specialized suits. Today would test their limits. "Computer, begin Weather Program 1. Jae-yun commanded. The room's temperature dropped slowly. Light rain began to fall. Commander Vress shivered, his mantis-like form trembling. "This liquid, it's everywhere." His voice carried both fear and fascination. "On Earth, rain is common," Hanwoo explained, walking through the drizzle. "Sometimes it rains for days. You need to learn to move, fight, and survive in it." Lieutenant Nixis seemed happier in the rain, her amphibian skin absorbing the moisture. But when the temperature dropped further, she began to struggle. "So cold," she gasped. "Your suit will help," Jae-yun assured her, "but you need to keep moving. Movement generates heat." She demonstrated simple exercises, designed to work with each species' unique body structure. Captain Teller had the hardest time. The crystalline being's surface was developing micro-cracks from the temperature change. "I don't understand," they chimed anxiously. "How do you handle such rapid changes?" Hanwoo adjusted Teller's suit settings. "Humans learn to build shelters, make fire, create clothing. But more importantly, we learn to plan ahead. Look around the room. What do you see?" The alien officers scanned their surroundings. The rain continued to fall. "There," Commander Vress pointed with a trembling limb. "Those rock formations could provide cover." "Good," Hanwoo smiled. "What else?" Lieutenant Nixis moved carefully across the wet ground. "The trees, their branches could be used for temporary shelter." "Excellent," Jae-yun said. "Now you're thinking like humans. We survive because we see resources where others see obstacles." The training continued. Hour after hour, the alien officers faced different challenges. The rain turned to snow. The temperature swung between extremes. The gravity increased gradually. Commander Vress fell first, his legs giving out under the increased gravity. But instead of asking for help, he began to crawl, using his multiple limbs to distribute his weight. Hanwoo nodded approvingly. The commander was adapting. Lieutenant Nixis found a solution to the cold by digging into the soft earth, where the temperature was more stable. "Like the mud beds on my world," she explained proudly. Even Captain Teller made progress. They discovered that by adjusting their crystalline structure, they could better handle the temperature changes. "It requires much energy," they chimed, "but it works." "That's exactly what we wanted to see," Jae-yun said, helping Commander Vress back to his feet. "You're not just surviving now, you're adapting, using your own strengths to overcome Earth's challenges." Hanwoo called up a holographic display. "Look at these readings. Your endurance has improved 30% since we started. Your reaction times to environmental changes are better. You're learning." "But it hurts," Commander Vress admitted, his translator conveying the pain in his voice. "Everything hurts. Pain is a teacher," Hanwoo said quietly. "It shows us our limits and how to push past them. Every human child learns this growing up on Earth." Lieutenant Nixis looked at the cadets with new understanding. "Your children, they face these conditions from birth." "Yes," Jae-yun answered. "Earth doesn't care if you're young or old, strong or weak. It challenges everyone equally. That's why humans learn to help each other survive. Captain Teller's crystalline form shimmered thoughtfully. Perhaps that is the real lesson here. Not just physical adaptation, but cooperation. Exactly, Hanwoo said. Tomorrow will be harder. You'll face multiple challenges at once, but you won't face them alone. As the alien officers left the training room, supporting each other, Jai-yun turned to Hanwoo. They're stronger than they think. Yes, he agreed. They just needed Earth's challenges to show them that. He looked at the training room's controls. Tomorrow, we show them what a real Earth storm feels like. The alien officers had reached their breaking points today. But like humans before them, they hadn't broken. They had adapted, grown stronger, and learned to work together. Earth's lessons were harsh, but they were learning them well. The training facility's alarms blared without warning. Red lights flashed through the corridors. Hanwoo looked up from his desk, immediately alert. This wasn't part of today's training schedule. Emergency power failure detected, the computer announced. Main systems shutting down. Backup systems failing. Environmental controls offline. Jai-yun burst into the room. The alien officers are still in Training Room C. They ran through the corridors, which were getting colder by the minute. Without the facility's environmental controls, the natural conditions of the planet they were on, a world chosen for its Earth-like properties, were seeping in. Status report. Hanwoo called as they reached the training room. Inside, Commander Vress and the other alien officers were already showing signs of distress. Main power coupling is completely dead. Lieutenant Nixis reported, her amphibian skin dangerously dry. Backup systems were damaged by a power surge. Captain Teller's crystalline form vibrated with concern. Temperature dropping. My structure beginning to stress. Hanwoo looked at Jai-yun. This wasn't a simulation anymore. This was real survival. Listen up, Jai-yun shouted. Everything we've trained for, this is it. Real conditions, real danger. But you know what to do. Commander Vress straightened his trembling form. Yes, yes we do. He turned to the others. Remember the shelter training. The alien officers moved with purpose now. Captain Teller used their crystalline body to reflect what heat remained toward the others. Lieutenant Nixis found ways to collect moisture from the air vents. Commander Vress, despite the increasing gravity, used his strong limbs to move equipment they needed. Good, Hanwoo said, helping them build a shelter using emergency materials. But it's going to get worse. This facility was built with Earth normal conditions in mind. When all systems fail, we'll face full Earth gravity. Commander Vress finished, his voice steady despite his fear, and Earth weather. The room grew colder. Ice began forming on the walls. The gravity increased as more systems failed. Form pairs, Jai-yun ordered. Share body heat, like we practiced. Support each other's weight. Captain Teller, adjust your crystal structure like you learned. Wide base, low center of gravity. They worked together, humans and aliens, using everything they had learned. When the gravity hit Earth normal, Commander Vress's legs buckled, but Lieutenant Nixis caught him. When Nixis's skin began to dry dangerously, Teller found a way to collect and direct moisture to her. Look at your suits, Hanwoo said, checking the readings. Power's almost gone. Soon you'll have no support at all. We don't need it, Commander Vress said firmly. We've learned. We've adapted. The storm outside the facility grew worse. The building shook. Temperature dropped further. Remember what we taught you about human history, Jai-yun said, helping them reinforce their shelter. Our ancestors survived ice ages with nothing but fire and caves. You have more than they did. You have knowledge. You have each other. Hours passed. The alien officers faced every challenge Earth could throw at them. When one would start to fail, the others would help. They used their different abilities together, turning weaknesses into strengths. Finally, after what seemed like forever, the main power rumbled back to life. Warmth slowly returned. The gravity eased back to normal. The emergency was over. Hanwoo looked at their makeshift shelter with pride. You did it. You survived Earth conditions without support, without your suits, without technology. The alien officers were exhausted but alive. More than alive. They were proud. We understand now, Captain Teller chimed softly, why humans are the way they are. Why you never give up. Earth taught us that survival isn't about being the strongest, Jia-Yun said. It's about adapting, working together, never giving up. Commander Vress looked at his fellow officers, then at the human cadets. We are not humans. We will never be as naturally suited to these conditions as you are. He stood straighter, his voice firm. But now we know we can survive them. We can overcome them. That, Hanwoo smiled, was the most important lesson of all. As they left the training room, the alien officers walked differently than before. They had faced Earth's fury and survived. They weren't Deathworlders like humans, but they had learned to survive like them. And that was exactly what they needed to learn. 2 weeks after the power failure incident, the training facility buzzed with activity. Hanwoo stood in the observation room, watching the alien officers with growing pride. The change in them was remarkable. Commander Vress moved smoothly through the obstacle course, his once fragile limbs now strong enough to handle Earth-normal gravity. He no longer needed the full support of his environmental suit. Instead, he wore only a light gravity stabilizer. Look at his movement patterns, Jia-Yun said, pointing to the monitors. He's learned to use his multiple limbs to distribute weight, just like Earth insects. In the rainfall chamber, Lieutenant Nixis was teaching other amphibian officers her new techniques. She had developed a way to store moisture in special pouches, just like desert frogs on Earth. She could now survive in dry conditions for hours without support. Remember, Nixis called to her students, your body can adapt. Trust it. Train it. Captain Teller had made the most surprising progress. The crystalline being had discovered they could change their molecular structure temporarily, becoming more flexible when needed. They now moved through temperature changes with grace, their crystal form shifting and adapting like ice becoming water, and back again. Their progress is beyond all expectations, Admiral Kress said, entering the observation room. His feathers were smooth now, a sign of satisfaction. The Council wants your training methods recorded and shared with all Academy branches. Hanwoo nodded. Sir, it's more than just physical training. They're learning to think differently. Below them, Commander Vress was demonstrating how to build an emergency shelter using minimal materials. His techniques combined his species' natural building instincts with human survival knowledge. Watch carefully, Vress instructed his team. Humans taught us that anything can be a resource. Even problems can become solutions. Lieutenant Nixis had moved to the temperature chamber. She no longer feared the cold. Instead, she showed others how to use it to their advantage, slowing their metabolism when needed, just like Earth's hibernating animals. Your body knows how to survive, she explained to a group of new trainees. You just need to trust it and train it. Jia-Yun turned to the Admiral. They're not just learning to survive Earth conditions. They're creating new ways to thrive in them. Captain Teller floated into the observation room, their crystal form glowing with excitement. Cadets, we've made a breakthrough. We found a way to teach crystalline beings to handle impact stress. May we demonstrate? In the training room, Teller's students showed how they could now absorb shocks that would have shattered them weeks ago. They had learned to redirect force through their crystal matrices, just like Earth minerals under pressure. Each species is finding their own way to adapt, Hanwoo explained to the Admiral. We're not trying to turn them into humans. We're helping them find their inner Deathworlder. The Admiral watched as more alien officers arrived for training. Word had spread through the Academy. Species that once avoided Earth-like conditions now volunteered for the program. You've done more than teach survival skills, the Admiral said. You've changed how they see themselves, how they see humans. Commander Vress approached the observation window. Even through the translator, his voice carried pride. We understand now. Earth didn't make humans strong by being kind. It made them strong by being harsh, and now we too can be strong. Han Wu smiled at Jia Yun. Their students weren't just surviving anymore. They were evolving, finding strength they never knew they had. Tomorrow, Jia Yun announced to the gathered officers, we start advanced training. Real wilderness survival. No suits. No support. Just you and Earth conditions. Instead of fear, the announcement was met with excitement. These officers, once afraid of Earth's harshness, now faced it with confidence. As they watched their students prepare for the next day's challenges, Han Wu thought about how far they'd come. They weren't just teaching aliens to survive anymore. They were breaking down the barriers between Deathworlders and non-Deathworlders, one adaptation at a time. Earth's children had done more than share their survival skills. They had shared their greatest strength, the ability to adapt, to change, to become stronger through adversity. And the galaxy would never be the same. Attention all training teams. Admiral Kress's voice echoed through the facility. The Galactic Council has issued a challenge to test your new abilities. Han Wu and Jia Yun stood with their alien officers in the main hall. The air was tense with excitement. 3 days. No environmental suits. No support systems. You will face Earth-like conditions in the wild. The Admiral's feathers rippled as he spoke. Mixed teams of humans and aliens must survive together. Commander Vress stepped forward, his mantis-like form steady in the Earth-normal gravity. We accept this challenge. The transport ships took them to a remote testing ground. It was a small planet specially terraformed to match Earth's harshest environments. Mountains rose in the distance. A dense forest spread below. Storm clouds gathered overhead. Remember everything you've learned, Han Wu said as they prepared to split into teams. Trust your training. Trust each other. They divided into 4 groups. Each team had 1 human and 3 alien officers. Han Wu led the mountain team. Jia Yun took the forest group. The other human cadets headed for the desert and wetland zones. Commander Vress joined Han Wu's mountain team. Captain Teller chose the forest with Jia Yun. Lieutenant Nixus took the wetlands. Each would face their greatest fears. Begin. The signal flared across the sky. Han Wu's team moved toward the mountains. The gravity was full Earth normal. The air was thin. Snow began to fall. Cold, so cold, one of the alien officers whispered. But Commander Vress stepped up. Remember the shelter techniques, he said, already gathering materials. Work together. Share warmth. In the forest, Jia Yun's team faced heavy rain and wild temperature swings. Captain Teller, instead of hiding from the conditions, used their crystalline form to create a rainbow of light signals, helping the team stay together. The forest is like the training room, Jia Yun reminded them. Everything here can help us survive. Reports came in from the other teams. The desert group had found underground caves, using them for shelter just as humans had done for thousands of years. The wetland team was thriving, having learned to handle both water and land. As night fell, the real challenges began. The temperature dropped sharply. Wild animals, also created to match Earth's predators, prowled the darkness. But the alien officers were ready. They had trained for this. In the mountains, Commander Vress's team built a secure shelter, using techniques learned from studying Earth insects. They stayed warm by sharing body heat and using natural materials for insulation. Look at us, Vress said proudly. A month ago, this cold would have killed us. Now we barely notice it. In the forest, Captain Teller's crystal form glowed softly, providing light for the team. They had learned to find safe food, to make tools from natural materials, to read weather patterns just like humans. We are not just surviving, Teller chimed. We are living in these conditions. The second day brought new challenges. Storms raged across the testing grounds. Earthquakes shook the land. But the teams adapted, just as humans had always done. By the third day, something unexpected happened. The teams weren't just surviving. They were helping each other. The mountain team guided the forest group through high passes. The desert team shared water-finding techniques with the wetland group. When the final signal came, marking the end of the challenge, no one had failed. Every team had survived. More than that, they had worked together, combining human determination with alien abilities in ways never seen before. Admiral Kress landed in his shuttle, his feathers puffed with excitement. In all my years, I've never seen anything like this. You didn't just survive. You turned Earth's challenges into advantages. Hanwoo looked at the tired but proud faces around him. Humans and aliens, standing together as equals. Commander Vress spoke for all of them. We are not Deathworlders like humans, he said, but we have learned their greatest skill. The ability to adapt and grow stronger through challenge. The Admiral nodded. The Council has seen enough. This training program will become standard for all galactic officers. You've proven that any species can learn to survive like humans. As they boarded the ships back to the facility, Jia-Yun smiled at Hanwoo. We did more than teach them to survive Earth conditions. Yes, Hanwoo agreed. We taught them that being the Deathworlder isn't about where you're from. It's about never giving up, no matter what challenges you face. The celebration of their successful challenge was cut short by blaring alarms. Red emergency lights flashed through the Academy's halls. All officers report to Emergency Command. Immediately, the announcement system boomed. This is not a drill. Hanwoo and Jia-Yun rushed to the command center with their alien officers. Admiral Kress was already there, his feathers pressed flat with concern. We've received a distress signal from the colony world Novus Prime, the Admiral said, activating a holographic display. Their environmental systems have failed. The planet's natural conditions are similar to Earth's worst. The display showed a world in chaos. Storms covered half the planet. Earthquakes had destroyed many buildings. The gravity was increasing as the planet's orbit shifted. There are 10,000 colonists trapped there, the Admiral continued. Most rescue teams can't handle the conditions. But you, he looked at the gathered officers, you've trained for exactly this. Commander Vress stepped forward without hesitation. We'll go. We know how to survive these conditions now. Not just survive, Lieutenant Nixis added. We can help others survive too. They boarded the rescue ships within the hour. During the flight, Hanwoo and Jia-Yun helped the teams prepare. This wasn't training anymore. Real lives depended on their skills. Remember, Hanwoo said as they approached the planet, everything we practiced was for this moment. Earth conditions are hard, but you know how to handle them now. The ships landed in the colony's main city. The scene was worse than the reports showed. The gravity was almost at Earth normal. Acid rain fell from dark clouds. The ground shook with constant tremors. Captain Teller took charge of the Crystal Being colonists, showing them how to adjust their structures to handle the stress. Focus on your core matrix, they chimed above the storm. Adapt like we learned. Commander Vress led teams into damaged buildings, his strengthened limbs now able to handle the gravity as they rescued trapped colonists. Move like we practiced, he called to his fellow officers. Use the gravity to your advantage. Lieutenant Nixis organized water management, using techniques learned from Earth's flood survivors. Her teams created safe zones where colonists could gather. Jia-Yun worked with the colony's engineers, teaching them how to build Earth-style emergency shelters. These structures bend with the quakes instead of breaking, she explained, just like trees in a storm. Hanwoo coordinated from the command center, directing teams based on Earth survival protocols. The planet is acting like Earth during its worst periods, he told them. But we know how to handle this. We've trained for it. Hour after hour, they worked. When some officers grew tired, others stepped up. They used everything they had learned, finding safe water sources, creating temporary shelters, treating injuries with limited supplies. The alien officers amazed everyone with their new abilities. Species that once couldn't handle high gravity were carrying colonists to safety. Those who feared temperature changes were working in the worst storms. Watch how the humans handle each problem, Commander Vress told the colonists. They don't fight the conditions. They adapt to them. We've learned to do the same. After 3 days of constant work, they had evacuated most of the colonists. The rest were safe in reinforced shelters, built using Earth designs. Admiral Kress contacted them from the Academy. "The Council is speechless," he said. "You've saved thousands of lives in conditions that would have killed most rescue teams." "We had good teachers," Captain Teller chimed, looking at Hanwoo and Jai-yun. "The humans showed us that surviving isn't about being the strongest. It's about being the most adaptable." As they prepared to leave the colony, the local governor stopped them. "How can we ever thank you?" she asked. Commander Vress answered, "Thank Earth. Its harsh conditions created humans who taught us how to survive anything. Now we can pass that knowledge on to others." Back on their ships, Hanwoo and Jai-yun looked at their tired but proud teams. These weren't just students anymore. They were proof that any species could learn to face Earth's challenges. "You know what this means," Jai-yun said quietly to Hanwoo. "Every species can become Deathworlders if they're willing to learn." Hanwoo nodded. "And that will change everything." News of the successful rescue mission spread quickly through the galaxy. The Galactic Academy's main hall was packed with representatives from dozens of worlds. All had come to see the graduation ceremony of the first Earth-conditioned survival class. Hanwoo stood at attention beside Jai-yun as Admiral Kress addressed the crowd. 1 month ago, these officers could barely survive in Earth-normal conditions, the Admiral said, his feathers gleaming with pride. Today, they will demonstrate what they've learned. The demonstration area had been set up to simulate extreme conditions. Commander Vress led the first presentation, moving smoothly through obstacles under triple his homeworld's gravity. "Notice how I distribute weight across multiple points," he explained to the amazed audience. "This technique, learned from Earth insects, allows us to handle high-gravity environments." Lieutenant Nixis followed, showing how her species could now survive in both wet and dry conditions. She moved from a water-filled chamber to an arid zone without any environmental support. "Our bodies can adapt," she called out, her skin adjusting to the dry air. "Just as Earth's amphibians learned to survive on land, we too can change." Captain Teller's demonstration drew gasps from the crowd. The crystalline beings shifted their structure to handle extreme temperature changes, something their species had thought impossible. "We learned from Earth's minerals," Teller chimed. "They survived tremendous pressures by becoming stronger, not breaking." In the audience, representatives from various worlds watched in amazement. Species that had always avoided Earth-like planets were seeing new possibilities. "This changes everything," one diplomat whispered. "We can explore worlds we never dared to before." The next demonstration showed real emergency scenarios. Teams of mixed species worked together, building shelters, finding safe water, handling natural disasters. Each officer showed how they had adapted Earth survival techniques to work with their unique biology. Hanwoo stepped forward to explain. "We didn't try to turn them into humans. We helped them find their own ways to handle Earth conditions." "The results speak for themselves," Jai-yun added. She displayed the rescue mission data. "These officers saved thousands of lives in conditions that would have killed them just weeks ago." The council representatives approached the training area. They had come to make an important announcement. "Based on these results," the head counselor said, "we are establishing Earth survival training as a requirement for all galactic officers. Every species must learn these skills." Commander Vress stepped forward. "If I may speak." At the council's nod, he continued, "We thought humans were strange for coming from such a harsh world. We called Earth a death world. But now we understand. It was Earth's challenges that made humans strong." Lieutenant Nixis joined him. "They taught us that any species can become stronger through adversity. We just need the right training and the will to adapt." Captain Teller's crystal form glowed with enthusiasm. Look at us now. A mantis being who can handle high gravity, an amphibian who can survive in the desert, a crystal being who can bend instead of break. We are living proof that evolution doesn't stop with your home world. The council leader turned to Hanwoo and Jai-yun. Your training methods will be shared with all academy branches. You've shown us that being the Deathworlder is not just about where you're from. It's about how you face challenges. As the ceremony ended, species that once avoided each other now talked excitedly about future joint missions. The barriers between Deathworlders and non-Deathworlders were breaking down. You know what this means, Jai-yun said to Hanwoo as they watched their students celebrate. We're not just teaching survival skills anymore. We're changing how the galaxy sees itself. Hanwoo nodded. Earth taught humanity that the only way to survive is to adapt. Now we've taught that lesson to the stars. Commander Vress approached them, standing tall and proud in Earth's gravity. Thank you, he said simply. You showed us that we are all capable of becoming stronger. That any world can be a homeworld if you learn to adapt to it. As the celebration continued, news was already spreading through the galaxy. The age of limited worlds and restricted zones was ending. A new era was beginning, one where any species could learn to thrive in any environment. All it took was the right teachers and the courage to adapt. 1 year after the first Earth survival training class, the Galactic Academy looked very different. Hanwoo stood at the window of his new office, watching students of all species training together in the grounds below. Professor Park, Jai-yun called from the doorway, still smiling at their new titles. The graduation ceremony is about to start. They walked together to the main arena. This wasn't just any graduation. It was the ceremony for the 100th class of their Earth survival training program. In 1 year, they had trained over 1,000 alien officers from 200 different species. Commander Vress was there, now serving as a senior instructor. He had just returned from a deep space mission, where his team had explored planets they once thought too dangerous to visit. The galaxy is changing, Vress said, greeting his former teachers. We've mapped 50 new colony worlds this year alone. Worlds we used to call death worlds. Lieutenant Nixus arrived next, leading a group of new amphibian students. Her species had recently established their first dryland colonies, something unthinkable before the training program. My homeworld has opened diplomatic relations with Earth, she announced proudly. They want to learn more about adapting to different environments. Captain Teller floated in, their crystal form glowing with excitement. They had just published a study on how crystalline beings could survive extreme conditions by changing their molecular structure, all based on techniques learned from Earth minerals. Look at our legacy, Teller chimed, gesturing to the gathered graduates. Every one of these officers can now survive in conditions that would have killed them a year ago. Admiral Kress took the stage, his feathers shimmering in the light. When we first asked human cadets to teach our officers, many thought it was a mistake. How could students teach experienced officers? How could Deathworlders teach non-Deathworlders? The crowd chuckled at the old prejudices that now seemed so foolish. But look at us now, the Admiral continued. Our rescue teams can operate on any planet. Our explorers can visit any world. Our colonies can thrive in any environment. All because 2 human cadets taught us that adaptation is stronger than limitation. Hanwoo and Jai-yun watched as each graduate demonstrated their new abilities. Species that once needed constant environmental support now moved freely in Earth normal conditions. Beings that could barely survive temperature changes now handled extreme weather with ease. But the greatest change, Jai-yun said in her speech, isn't in physical abilities. It's in how we see each other. There are no Deathworlders or non-Deathworlders anymore. There are just beings willing to learn, adapt, and grow stronger together. The ceremony included a surprise announcement. The Galactic Council had decided to rename the program. It would now be called the Universal Adaptation Program, removing the stigma of Earth conditions being something to fear. Because that's what humans taught us, Commander Vress explained to the crowd. Every world can make you stronger if you learn to adapt to it. Every challenge can make you better if you face it together. After the ceremony, Hanwoo found a quiet moment to look at the stars through the Academy's great window. A year ago, those stars had represented barriers between species. Now they represented opportunities. Thinking deep thoughts, Jae-yun asked, joining him. Just remembering where this all started, he replied. With a crisis and a crazy idea to let cadets teach officers. Lieutenant Nixus approached them. It started long before that, she said. It started when life on Earth refused to give up, no matter how hard things got. When humans learned to turn their harsh world into their greatest strength. And now that strength belongs to everyone. Captain Teller chimed, joining them. Every graduate of this program carries a piece of Earth's legacy with them to the stars. Commander Vress completed their circle. We used to think humans were strange for coming from such a harsh world. Now we understand. Earth's harshness was a gift. It taught humanity the most important lesson in the galaxy. What's that? A new student asked, overhearing them. Hanwoo smiled. That there's no such thing as a death world. There are only worlds we haven't learned to call home yet. As they watched the graduates leave for their new assignments across the galaxy, they knew their legacy would continue. The barriers between species were gone. The fear of harsh worlds was fading. A new age of exploration and cooperation had begun. And it all started because two human cadets believed that anyone could learn to be a Deathworlder.